Well, hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I see everyone beginning to join us now. We have got people from all around the world. Some people are tuning on in the middle of the night over in Asia and Australia. We've got people from my home country over here in Europe and the UK. And then we've got our amazing friends over in America as well. I can see everyone beginning to tune in. Well, thank you for joining us today. First and foremost, make sure that you have a glass of wine, regardless of what time it is. It might be 12 noon PST with all of our friends in Napa right now, and it is about 8 p.m. over here in England, but you should never have an empty glass. I say that, my glass is empty, but it will be filled very soon. We're going to kick off in round about 1 minute, where I will be delving into a wonderful number of questions and wines and stories with our amazing panel, who I will be introducing to you very, very soon. I'm going to wait just 1 more minute so that we have enough people joining on there, and then we will kick off the festivities. But I can see we're all in our various different places. I've got a massive wall of wine behind me. I know that we got Sara, who's over. Are you up in Lake Tahoe, did you say?
That's correct.
Wow. And that view behind you is fantastic. We got some people in our wineries. I think Stacy and Suzanne in our wineries, also Karen. We got Raj. In fact, I think all you guys are in your wineries right now, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
No, maybe. Yes. Right, brilliant. I think that it is time to start this wonderful session, this Napa Sessions panel, should we say, on Sauvignon Blanc, the wonders of Sauvignon Blanc. And just to lay out to people, what are we going to do today? What is the kind of order going to be? Well, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the history of Sauvignon Blanc first and how it got to Napa. I'm not going to go into too much detail because we've got 5 amazing experts here who will be telling you their own stories about that. Then I'm going to delve into just a little bit of history on our panel themselves and tell you where they came from, how they got to where they are now. Then I'm going to allow them to just tell you a wee bit about who they are and what they're doing right now. So without further ado, let us kick off. So I'm Aidy Smith. Very nice to meet you all. Hello, lovely audience who have tuned in today. I am a TV presenter for Amazon Prime's The Three Drinkers show, and I work with Vivino as their global brand ambassador. I've also written a column for The Independent for the past 5 years. So very much a big wine lover, which is why I am here today. And what I want to do before I introduce our lovely panel is let's just talk a little bit about the history of Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon Blanc, as we know, it's one of the most famous white wines produced all around the globe. And it dates back originally to Loire Valley in the 1500s, where it's known as Phifer. And one of its parents we know to be a grape variety called Sauvignon. This means that it has a variety of different sibling grapes, which could be Chenin Blanc and Grüne Veltliner are probably 2 that you've heard of the most. And we know this grape because of Bordeaux, mainly in the history of time. And it made its way over there in the 1700s. And at one point in Bordeaux, there was actually more white wine produced than there was red wine, which is quite fascinating to think, wow, for what we know of today. But here's the interesting thing. Whilst it was there, Sauvignon Blanc crossed with Cabernet Franc to produce the grape variety we know as Cabernet Sauvignon, which is another grape variety that is incredibly famous within Napa and all around the world. And at this point, once it had kind of crossed and done its thing there, it just traveled all around the world because it's such a versatile grape variety. It can hold itself in so many different climates. And so that journey began. But we are here today to talk about this grape variety specifically in Napa Valley. And so when did it make its journey over to California? Well, that was in the 19th century. And it found its way over to Livermore Valley in the 19th century due to a chap called Charles Wetmore, who incidentally was also responsible for the very first California State Viticultural Commission. It's quite a word there, isn't it? So as part of this, he thought, well, I'm going to bring some of the best plantings in the world over to California so that we can grow our vines and make some bloody good wine. And it so happens that some of those plant cuttings came from Chateau d'Yquem over in Bordeaux. So the Sauvignon Blanc that is or was planted in 1881 at Inglenook Winery could very well have been a clone from Chateau d'Yquem, one of the most famous wineries in the world for that grape variety. Quite cool, that. So these cuttings came over from France, they came over from Europe, and they went all around California, and specifically in Napa as well. So here we have the birth, so to speak, of Sauvignon Blanc. Over time, the production increased, but then we had the prohibition. Boo, no one likes prohibition. And at this point, things got a little bit tricky, because what was being produced under the Sauvignon Blanc grape variety was referred to as Sauterne, but not the Sauterne with an S on the end that you're thinking of from Bordeaux. It didn't have the S, but similar in the fact that it was either very sweet or very dry jug wine. And not much of it was very good. There were a couple of exceptions, you know, like Inglenook, Larkspeed, and Robert Mondavi who were producing it. And it was Robert Mondavi who actually put this on the map by taking a dry variety, which he called Fumé Blanc, kind of in homage to Loire Valley. Now, over the years, more and more experimentation was done with this grape variety. And I like to say that we are now in the golden age of Sauvignon Blanc, because today there are just so many styles coming from Napa alone. I'm not going to go into any more info about Sauvy B for now, because our lovely panel are going to do that. But what I am going to do is just very briefly now tell you about the panel who we have in front of us. So we have Suzanne. Give us a wave, Suzanne. So Suzanne there from Phifer Pavitt. So hello, Suzanne. Suzanne is originally from Ringgold, which is a small rural town in Georgia. Now, she started her life out excelling within the technology industry and had always had a massive passion for wine alongside her partner, Shane. At long last, she couldn't resist it, and she caught the vino bug. She was like, it's time. So she acquired some land in Calistoga, and there she built Phifer Pavitt Winery, which is a very small but mighty winery with a big focus on sustainability. So she produces a variety of different wines. She also has a Cabernet Rosé, which I find pretty cool. She does olive oil, and I believe you even have a bourbon, which is aged in a Cabernet Sauvignon barrel, which just blows my mind. That's very exciting. Today, we will be talking about your Sancerre style, which is date night Sauvignon Blanc, and that will be the topic of discussion for your wine. I'm now going to move over to Sara from PEJU. Give us a little wave there, Sara. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. So Sarah's wine journey began at a very young age because she was helping basically plant all of the wine grapes on her family's 400-acre organic estate, her ranch. And she had an even bigger deep dive into wine when she got involved with Kendall Jackson. She did a lot of seasonal work there, working throughout high school and college years, and eventually became the enology assistant during Crush. And at that point, she was like, okay, wine is my life. So she went and completed a winemaking program at Fresno State, became the associate winemaker at Franciscan Mount Vida Winery, had a cheeky little stint in Chile. And since 2006, she's been winemaker at PEJU. So hello, 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 Sara. Now, Stacy Vogel from Minor, would you give us a little wave there? Hello, hello. So Stacy's originally from Northern Carolina, and she traveled a lot and completely fell in love with wine on this journey. Now, she graduated originally and worked in healthcare and IT, but thought this isn't fun enough. So she decided to pivot into the industry that she now loves. And she got a job working for a wine and beer distributor. And during this time, she was able to just fall in love with wines from all across the world. And she had such great access to this. She just thought, you know what, I'm taking the leap. I'm going to California. So she got a master's degree from UC Davis, started her winemaker journey, and joined Minor in 2008, where she is now head winemaker. So hello, hello, Stacy. I've got two more intros to do, then I promise you all I'll shut up and I'll hand over to our lovely panel. But next up is Karen. So Karen Cakebread from Ziata. So Karen is originally a Palo Alto native, and her first foray into wine was over 30 years ago in 1988, where she looked after all the marketing for Cakebread Cellars. She has traveled the world extensively for over 18 years, going everywhere from Nepal and Turkey to India and Africa. And I believe you've even climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. So well done. That's amazing. You have had multiple roles within various different, avenues of wine within companies, and you've helped set up and start and be on multiple foundations throughout Napa, multiple committees. And in 2008, she decided it was time to found her own boutique winery, which is Ziata, which we will be talking to you about today. And finally, last but by no means least, we have the lovely Raj Patel. So Raj was born in India in the state of Gujarat, and he settled in California, Northern California, in 1972 with his family. He attended UC Davis, got his degree, and then had an internship at Robert Mondavi, where it is basically where he fell in love with wine. And after that, he got a bunch more experience and decided, you know what? I'm starting my own winery, which is exactly what he did. In 2007, his first release was of just 100 cases, and he's steadily grown over time with quality in mind. He's now at about 1,000 cases a year, which he completely sells out. So that is, ladies and gentlemen, our brief little introduction to our wonderful panel who we have here today. I would now like to just hand over to each of these folks very quickly to tell us a little bit about where they are now and what they're doing. So Suzanne, if you wouldn't mind kicking off for us, please.
Where I am and what I'm doing, it's hard to follow you, Aidy, after that introduction. That was pretty fabulous. I am joining you all today from the Phifer Pavitt Winery in Calistoga. And it's a lovely, already almost 100-degree day. So inside in the AC to be talking with you. So delighted to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And that was great. That was so brief. That was fantastic. I couldn't have wished for anything better. Thank you. After I've been blabbing on for so long. Sara Fowler, over to you.
Yes, so I'm in the beautiful Lake Tahoe area. Should be at work, but escaping the heat and for a well-deserved long weekend. And I'm looking forward to drinking everyone's Sauvignon Blanc, and this should be a fun panel.
Oh yes, it will. It better be. Stacy, it's over to you.
Yeah, I'm here in my home in Napa, California, kind of hiding in a corner away from the laundry and kids' Legos all over the floor of my living room. Again, it is 100 degrees outside, so we're staying inside today.
Oh gosh, I think it's hot everywhere over the world. I hope everyone who's tuned in, because I know we've got quite a few people from all over here. Someone in Phoenix, it's got to be hot in Phoenix right now. Anyway, I will move on over next to Karen, please.
Hi everyone, I'm in Calistoga with Suzanne, but not actually with her. I'm at my home a little bit north of downtown Calistoga, where I also grow a little Sauvignon Blanc here. And like everyone else, I'm broadcasting from my kitchen table inside in the air conditioning.
Oh, I wish I had air conditioning here, but I don't. Raj, it's over to you.
Well, thank you very much. You did a great job. I'm not sure how I'm going to follow it as well, but you know, I'm here in Silicon Valley in San Jose, where I reside. The winery is up in Napa, but I'm here today. It's a good 90 degrees, very hot, and might even hit 95 today. So it's really warm outside, but it is a comfortable 72 in the house, or 73. So yes, looking forward to the panel.
Well, do you know what? On that note, I do believe, speaking of so much heat, it's time to grace our glasses with a little bit of wine. So I would love if Stacy would be able to tell us a little bit about her wine. What makes it a Napa Sauvignon Blanc? Over to you.
What makes a Napa Sauvignon Blanc? Well, people often ask me why we get Napa Sauvignon Blanc or where good Sauvignon Blancs come from. And Sauvignon Blanc being a cousin or parent, I can't remember, of Cabernet Sauvignon. Wherever Cabernet grows great, Sauvignon Blanc is going to grow great. So if you think the best Cabernet Sauvignon grown in the world is Napa Valley, for example, you're going to find fantastic Sauvignon Blancs here. So I love growing and buying fruit, sourcing fruit from a lot of different sub-appellations here in Napa. We get several, and it's also a fun grape to experiment with because it can be very pliable. You throw a little bit of oak on it, and it just changes the character a little bit, and it's fun to play with. And it's something you also get results on pretty quickly. You know, you're harvesting your fruit in August or September, and you have a finished product in February or March that's ready to drink. It already tastes delicious, and you're ready to share with the public. So that's one thing I love. I love about our valley, our little valley here.
I love it. Now tell us a little bit about your specific Sauv Blanc that we've got in the glass here as well.
Yeah, so for Minor, I source from a couple vineyards. Some are, I get a few that there's some clonal selection with Sauvignon Blanc, and one is a Sauvignon Muscat, and it has just this extra floral kind of character to it. So I like adding a little bit of that to our Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc. I prefer to ferment in basically 100% stainless steel. Like I said, I do a little experiment with a little bit of oak, with a little bit of, we brought in a big concrete, amphora to play with. But at the end of the day, it's 100% Sauvignon Blanc, 100% stainless steel, so that we're really emphasizing the freshness and those floral characters. And I like it on the leaner side, high acid, And that's what that's how I like to make our Sauvignon Blanc for our customers.
Fantastic, fantastic. What I love about all of you here is that you all have your own journeys of how you came to being and why you're doing what you are doing now. And I'd love to kick off with the first question now that our glasses have been graced. And I do hope the audience there, please make sure you have something in your glasses as well. It's sacrilege if you don't. But I have my first question for Suzanne. And I'd love to know, what was a defining moment that made you realize that the wine industry was for you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think there are lots of moments. I jokingly say that when you are exploring wine, that there's very few people, I think, at some point, and drinking a beautiful glass of wine and understanding the story behind it, don't fall in love and fantasize about this amazing life that we all lead. But I think the defining moment for me was back in my high-tech days. Grew up in a Southern Baptist, rural Southern family where we did not consume alcohol. And so went away, my life went into out of college and in starting my career. And very quickly I discovered in sales meetings that what brought everyone together, regardless of your likes or dislikes, was wine. And I remember very, very distinctly sitting down at a table of about 10 people. I was shadowing my senior salesperson, a man, and his name was Jim. And Jim was a legend kind of in the company. And everyone at the table, there were men and women, and there was a whole mix of what everyone was going to order. And at the time, I'm dating myself, Jim actually took a physical menu, literally one you hold in your hand, not on a device or not a scan code as we've become familiar with lately. Yeah. And he navigated that wine list like a surgeon. What are you having? What will you be having? What do you like? What do you not like? How are you? And he asked these just questions in rapid fire succession, and he had everybody so focused. And I observed this so keenly, the power that wine had in that moment. And that was my aha moment. I said, I want to know how to do that. I want to know, I loved wine and felt like I was fairly knowledgeable, but to really delve in and become a connoisseur and then ultimately get into the business, I just felt like regardless of where we came from, what our day was that particular day, what was going on in our life, there was this suspended animation for a moment as he was asking questions and looking to make wine choices. And I got the bug then, and it's never stopped.
I love that. And I think, to this day, there's moments where I have had a tear in my eye when I've opened certain wines, just because of the history, the story. And I don't think I'm alone. Maybe I am, but I don't think I am. I'm sure you've all had some experience like that. And, the topic of conversation today, Sauvignon Blanc. Even with Sauvignon Blanc, there are so many different things that you can do with it. And I suppose that this lends me to the next question, which is for Karen over here. So Karen, there's so many different grape varieties out there in the world. Why have you decided to plant and produce Sauvignon Blanc?
Why not? It's a fabulous wine. It's refreshing. It has nice acidity, natural acidity. It goes with lots of food. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen at Cakebread Cellars, spent my 18 years there working with the chef, writing a cookbook. And to me, having that balance of acidity along with the beautiful fruit really makes all the difference in the world when it comes to having it at the table. So, it's also a little bit sassy and refreshing. And and as everyone has said, you said as well, there's so many different styles of Sauvignon Blanc. You go everything from super stainless steel to, a lot of oak. So it's just finding your wheelhouse. And I have a fabulous winemaker. We have a mixture on the panel here of winemakers and vintners. And I can't take credit for making the wine, but I work with my winemaker in lockstep about sourcing vineyards. I have the Sauvignon Blanc vineyard here at my house, and speaking of Sauvignon Muscat, it's 70% Muscat planted and then 30% Clone 1, which I happen to like that muscat quality in the wines because of the aromatics. But I just think it's a really friendly wine, and I think that I love standing at a tasting and getting the you know, somebody tasting this like, oh, anything but Sauvignon Blanc. I'm like, wait a minute, why? Let's talk about why you don't like Sauvignon Blanc. And then they start talking, and I said, well, you know, let's just have a try of this. If you don't like it, you can dump it out. It's not going to hurt my feelings. So I'm happy to say that I feel like I have converted some Chardonnay drinkers or only red wine drinkers to enjoying Sauvignon Blanc, because I think that, you know, they just didn't know what they were missing. And, you know, on a warm day like today, that would be the first wine I would reach for.
And I think you've got a massive point there as well. It's converting people who don't necessarily think that they'll like something. I mean, we're going to explore throughout this session multiple different expressions of Sauvignon Blanc. And I have realized that my glass is now empty, which I do believe means that it's time for Sara to talk about her lovely Sauvignon Blanc from PEJU. Oh, and I think you're on mute. So you might want to unmute yourself. That would probably help. There we go.
Open a bottle of wine, unmute myself. You know, it's tough. Vacationing and trying to be productive. I have the last little sip of.
Well, I have to say, I am very excited to go through all of
2019.
these. So away with you.
All right. So you want to know a little bit about our Sauvignon Blanc? It's 100% Sauvignon Blanc. 2019, it's 100% estate, comes from 2 of our vineyard properties, our Persephone and Tess vineyard. I also use a little bit of the Muscat clone. I enjoy it. I planted that a few years back and have really enjoyed how it integrates with our other clonal choices. What I do, that's maybe a little bit different, or maybe people do this the same thing, is I pick in several different picks. I do an earlier pick for some more of the natural acidity, more of the citrusy notes, grapefruit. And then I'll pick a mid and then a later pick. And the later pick is more of the tropical notes. You're getting more of the roundness, freshness, maybe some little guayabana in there. I also stir the lees. I will stainless steel ferment, but I leave the wine on some lees and I stir that a little bit just to kind of give it a nice round mouthfeel. I've put some oak and different vintages down into some neutral oak and throw it in with my Chardonnay program and stir the lees in that as well. So I like to play and integrate. It's not the same every year, but the consistency, it's the same fruit, same vineyards, same winemaking style, if you will, fresh. I like bright acidity, but I also like kind of those more, you know, guava and passion fruit notes that I think is more of a California style, if you will. So you guys are enjoying it.
I think it's absolutely delightful.
Delicious.
I think one thing that is really important to say to our audience out there, because I know that we have people who are at all different stages of their wine journey, is that, you know, winemaking isn't simply picking the grapes, shoving them in a machine and then getting the juice and then that's it. There are so many different components to it. And, you know, Sarah's just touched upon a couple of different ones there, such as the time of which you pick those actual grapes. Are you picking it at the very beginning of the harvest, midway through, or at the end? Because that's going to have such an impact on the flavor of the wine. And then we're discussing things like lees as well and the influence that that has on it. And so there is such a wealth of different methods that our winemakers here are using to produce their wines. And I just find that incredible. And very nice, Sarah. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I will be coming back to you before too long with a question. But in the meantime, I will sip on this. And I would like to go over to Raj and ask you a question. So my question for you is, you know, it's true that Sauvignon Blanc in the world, it's usually produced with the intention of being consumed sooner rather than later. But there are some examples of Sauvignon Blanc out there that can easily age, and especially in Napa, where you all are. So could you tell us a little bit about this? How do these Sauvignon Blancs become like this? And if you can remember, perhaps telling us the oldest Sauvignon Blanc that you've ever had.
Got it. Okay, so you know, in regards to aging a Sauvignon Blanc, it just depends on how you make it. In our case, what we do is that we age it in French oak. And it does give beautiful tannin structures. As a matter of fact, we even put it in a darker bottle. We want it to age. We're looking forward to seeing what it tastes like. Our current release is 2018. The one we're having today is 2017. Our first one was 2016. So, and they're turning out to be beautiful. They're aging really well, really nice and complex, softening up on the mid palate. And I would say the oldest Sauvignon Blanc that I've had is actually a Fumé Blanc. It was almost about 20 years old. It was a Robert Mondavi one. And I had purchased it. And I actually found it in somewhere amongst all the red wines. And I'm like, okay, let's have this. And it was beautiful. And I think that Sauvignon Blanc, with the amount of acid that it has, could age really well. And it's interesting that a lot of people don't age these wines. I think that, you know, all wines over a decent amount of aging will come out to be a lot better. But most people think of Sauvignon Blanc as, let me get it today and I'm going to drink it today. And I think that if they took a different approach to it and let it age a little bit more, that might even be better.
Fantastic. And I think that hopefully that has debunked a myth for some of the people who are listening in today, that Sauvignon Blanc, it's not just something, as you say, that we crack open right now. There are so many different styles that you can sit on them for a while and enjoy them down the line. And so I truly hope that if there's one thing that people can take away at the end of today, I think Sarah's just fallen over, then it would be that you can, in fact, age Sauvignon Blanc. So 2 things I'd say. One, to our lovely audience, if you do have any questions, feel free to send them in. She's okay. She survived. She survived the ordeal. I'm sure another glass of wine will help. If you have any questions, then please do send them in. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat and I'll be asking some of them throughout this session and at the end when we've got a little bit of time as well. But in the meantime, my next question is for Stacy. And this has to do with this wonderful thing that I'm holding here, this glass. And so, you know, we often talk about glassware, and I've got a lot of my friends who I'll waltz into the room with a particular glass and they roll their eyes thinking, oh, he's doing his glass thing again. But there is a science behind glasses, behind the shape, behind why we put certain grape varieties in them. So could you just tell us a little bit about how that relates to Sauvignon Blanc and how that affects the taste of the wine, you know, when we lift it and drink it?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So the biggest thing is that you have a glass that you enjoy and you're going to put wine in, you're going to drink out of. That's really the most important. But if you're interested in kind of pairing glassware or in purchasing some specific glassware for some of your wines, you know, I think the biggest thing is kind of pairing the alcohol level with your wine. When you have, you know, those really big cab glasses with the really big bowl and the really big opening, that's mostly to let some of the stronger alcohol notes kind of get out of the way so you can smell the fruit. But in wines like Sauvignon Blanc that are very aromatic, very floral, maybe a little on the delicate side, you want something that's a little bit smaller, a bowl that's a little bit smaller to capture those aromas a little better. And, you know, our sense of smell and our sense of taste are intimately connected. So if you're smelling a little bit more of the fruit, you're going to taste a little bit more of the fruit. I have a couple examples. So at the winery, we actually are all stemless at the winery, except for our library wines. And so this is the glass we use for Sauvignon Blanc. So it's a small bowl and it comes up pretty narrow on the top. These are also excellent if you drink outside on the patio. This is much less likely to be tipped over with a big wind gust. So this is our outside glass all the time, which frankly, in the summer, if you're outside, we're drinking mostly Sauvignon Blanc anyway. So these get a lot of use in my house. But if you just have the basic, you know, a large glass versus small glass wine set that you may have gotten as a wedding present or something, the smaller glass will be a little bit better for the Sauvignon Blanc just because, again, you're capturing more of the aromas. And again, these smaller glasses, you're going to give yourself a smaller pour. So when you're drinking a cold wine on a hot day, if you have a big glass and you pour yourself a big pour, it's going to be hot by the time you get to the bottom. So small glass, small pour, water every second or third time, and you'll be able to drink your nice cold wine for the rest of the day. When I'm at home, though, my favorite everyday wine glass that I drink with almost all reds and whites, except for really big cabs, is this like Rhone style glass. And again, you can give yourself a small pour, but it's capturing those aromas at the top, and it gives a really nice little ding.
Oh yes, and do you know what? You're spot on. There are different occasions for different glasses. I've had Zalto glasses, which are, you know, renowned for being the Zalto glass, the most thin kind of precious glass in the world, for about 3 years, and I only just broke not just one but two in the same week. It was very sad, very sad. And I want us to go on to another wine very soon, but in the meantime, I do have a little bit of a follow-up question for Raj. And we have Susan who's asked, you know, sometimes she sees some cloudy Sauvignon Blancs, mostly clear, but sometimes cloudy. So what is it that causes that cloudiness within the liquid? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
It's hard to tell. I mean, unless the wine has gone bad or if it was that way. Most of the Sauvignon Blancs are pretty well filtered. And, you know, most Sauvignon Blancs are made in a stainless steel tank and go through a filtration. You know, I haven't seen too many cloudy Sauvignon Blancs. I don't know, maybe the other panelists could weigh in on that. But all of the Sauvignon Blancs that I've seen are very well polished, beautifully nice and clear, have a nice hue to it. So I haven't seen too many of those, but you know, it just depends on who the maker is. And if it's consistent with that maker, then it may be the style that they're making that's unfiltered. But even then with unfiltered wine, whether it's stainless steel tank or barreled, whether it's red wine or white wine, after a while, gravity does a beautiful job of cleaning it up. And so you shouldn't see it that murky.
Okay. Does anyone else want to, I think you did a great job of summing that up. Does anyone else want to give their 2 pennies on that as well? Fantastic. Okay.
Well,
oh, yep, Sarah.
But yeah, so sometimes a little bit of a heat stability can cause so protein instabilities. But if a wine is not heat stable, it can throw off a haze, and so it's not going to hurt you, but it's just a matter of getting the wine stabilized. So most people, Sauvignon Blancs tend to, you know, people clean them up a little bit at night or other ways of cleaning it up, but heat stability can throw it off. That's
fantastic. Well, thank you, lovely wine experts. No, that's great. I think that's fantastic. And I mean, this is why we're here as well. If you have any more questions like this, now is the time. And ask any question. No question is a silly question. That is why we're here. That is why we're doing what we're doing. On that particular note, in the meantime, I would absolutely love if Karen, you would share a little bit about your wine, which I'm going to reach over here, pardon my reach, and pour into my glass. So over to you.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you. As I said, I love Sauvignon Blanc, and this is why I'm here. When I started my company in 2008, my first varietal was about 200 cases of Sauvignon Blanc, and it's grown a little bit to around 900 cases, and we produce around 3,000 cases across the portfolio. But this particular wine, now that I'm my roots here in Calistoga and planted a Sauvignon Blanc vineyard, about 70% of that vineyard is Muscat and the rest is Clone 1. And we're in a hotter climate, so you're getting more of those tropical characteristics and maybe richness in the wine. And then I have vineyards all the way down to Carneros at the very coolest end of the valley. So it's a combination of warm climate, cool climate, and the cool climate gives me that more citrusy characteristic and really preserves the nice acidity balance in the wine. So I think between the warm climate, cool climate, and the 2 different clones, our protocol is to, we pick on the early side. So again, here, you have to make decisions on the style of wine you want to make. I want to preserve the freshness of the wine, and we pick on the early side of ripeness. And we always pick at night, so under the stars, and if we're lucky, sometimes under the full moon. But we take it back to the winery, we get it into tank, and we start fermentation. Then we move it over to neutral oak barrels. And a little bit of it goes into actually stainless steel barrels, which is a small vessel, but you still have the lees contacts, and we do stir the leaves to give it some richness and complexity. But what I like about the neutral oak treatment is that Sauvignon Blanc is naturally a higher acidic wine, and I think that the neutral oak really rounds off the edges of the acidity and makes it a little bit more complex and gets a little bit more weight on the palate. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But you know, it's not a complicated wine to make. It's just that you just have to sort of pick your lane and what style you want.
Fantastic. Could you very briefly, I know we're all total geeks here, but could we very briefly just say, what is a clone? For anyone who doesn't know what the word clone means, could you just really simply define that?
Well, here's how I don't know if I'll jump in with my analogy, because do a lot of tastings with consumers, and I tend to talk about clones a lot. So I equate it to roses. You know, there are a lot of different types of roses, but they all have their own personalities, and they all look different and smell different. So for me, I mean, this is my analogy. And so Sauvignon Blanc is that way. There are different clones, and each clone has its own distinct personality. So when you have to understand what those personalities are, and then when you're blending together or making a single clone vineyard, and your style. So it really goes back to style. So, but I'll toss this over to somebody else to pitch in with.
Honestly, I think you did a really good job there. Thank you. And I will keep asking a couple of questions like this from our lovely audience, and just things that I generally think, this could be something of use. But my next question that I'd love to come to you, and first of all, again, Karen, lovely wine. Thank you very much for sharing this with us and your description and helping us see more of the evolution of what Sauvignon Blanc can be, because it's not just a one-trick pony, it's so much more. It is Sarah's time to shine once more, because my next question for you is, you know, Sauvignon Blanc's typically referred to as a summer drink. And I know that even today we've been a little bit guilty of talking about sun and how we're drinking it. And, you know, that's the first thing that people tend to gravitate towards. But we all know that it's not just a drink for the sun and for summer. You know, personally, I like to put Sauvignon Blanc in a cooling flask, sit in the bath, slowly pour it out into my glass, and just, you know, cool myself down when I'm really hot in the bath. That's my particular time to have some Sauvy B. So my question to you, my very long-winded question to you, Sarah, is, do you have an occasion that screams Sauvignon Blanc?
I do. So not only is it my house water, but that aside, Sauvignon Blanc to me is, I would say, our bocce wine. And it's a wine that in the Napa Valley, we play bocce and we're very competitive. And so to me, Sauvignon Blanc goes with pretty much anything. And it's, you know, I will drink it all year round, but I think it's a good sports drink. It's light, it's refreshing, typically a little bit lighter in alcohol. It makes my bocce game so much better. I'm pretty sure it would help you guys, any other leisure sport that you have. But I'm not totally opposed to having it in the bath either. I mean, that's, you know, if it's not bubbles, it'll be Sauvignon Blanc. So I think Sauvignon Blanc is great for a walk in the evening with your dog. Yeah, or playing leisure sports and all of the
Fantastic.
above. All the time.
Fantastic. I love that. Does anyone else have a time where they specifically just think, do you know what? This is Sauvignon Blanc time. Anyone else? Karen, Suzanne even. We've got Suzanne over there.
For me, anything ethnic. Any ethnic food with spice, not necessarily heat spice, but flavor spice, a spicy vindaloo, tikka masala, just that counterweight and counterbalance that the bright acidity brings to ethnic food. It's my favorite pairing with Sauv Blanc.
So I am from originally a town in Yorkshire called Bradford. And we are very lucky to have a lot of incredible Indian cuisine, but very authentic Indian cuisine. So I 100% agree with you on that. Chicken makhanis, jalfrezis, biryanis, oh my goodness me. So we're going to come to food a little bit later, and I'm already starting to salivate a bit. And I can also see that we have some more questions here. Thank you for sending them in. I will be reading them out. What I'm going to do next is just come to Karen once more, because it is your turn for the next question. And this all has to do with temperature. And, you know, a lot of people think, okay, well, if I pour my wine into my glass, I need to make it really cold. So I'm going to chill it down as much as I possibly can. But in some instances, that can actually ruin your wine because it's now so cold, you're just not getting the taste out of it. So my question to you, Karen, would be, what is the optimum temperature to serve Sauvignon Blanc at? Why that temperature? And do you have any tricks to cooling it down quickly without ruining it? And you are on mute. Thank you so kindly for muting yourself. My panel is so polite. They mute themselves when I'm talking.
My dog's walking around the house here, so I didn't want to hear. She's snoring. So yes, I think that, you know, we all talk about cellar temperature, but that can be something different to different people. And if you don't have a proper wine cellar, what does that mean? So I pulled these wines out of all the panelists this morning out of my wine cellar, which sits at 55 degrees. And I thought that when I opened them all, I thought they were tasting beautiful. I think that if you're in a hot climate or you're sitting outside, I would chill it down a little bit more before you pour it, and then let it warm up in the glass. Because I have a funny story about a tasting I did in Singapore years ago with a bunch of Psalms and wine buyers in my previous life. And it's very frustrating because a lot of restaurants even can't get the temperature right on wines. So we did an experiment. We took this, it was Sauvignon Blanc. We threw it in the refrigerator and chilled it way, way down, like ice bucket temperature. We had one glass that was the proper temperature, and then we had one glass that was too warm. And only one person in the group figured out it was all the same wine. So that is just how dramatic temperature can be with wine. And so for me, Sauvignon Blanc, I would always start with it a little bit on the cooler side. And if you are sitting outside, I would, I get a bucket of ice and set it on top of the ice. You don't have to plunge it into the ice water like a bottle of champagne, but that's what I would do, or it's what I do too.
Amazing. And I'd say that 55 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe, is roughly 12.7 degrees Celsius, if we're going to go super light for it. So let's just say 13, shall we?
Yeah,
so just going on what Karen was saying there. Okay, brilliant. And I know that, if anyone else in the audience has some little quick tricks that they use to cool their wine down quickly. I particularly sometimes enjoy wetting a tea towel, wrapping that around the bottle, and then putting it in the fridge because the surface area cools it down a lot more quickly. But just touching upon what Karen said there, it's fascinating to see that temperature really does have such an effect on wines and how we can enjoy them. And, here's Sauvignon Blanc, but just to give it another slightly relatable story, a lot of people would always assume that you have red wines warm, but that's, again, not at all true. And if you go to really hot countries, you would actually cool them down quite a bit further, because when you're sitting outside, they'll continuously increase in temperature. And I guess that's the same thing here with Sauvignon Blanc in a hot country. You'd have it, as Karen says, a little bit lower temperature, because it is going to, over time, increase. So just know the country you're in, know what your room temperature is, and basically drink it how you like it at the temperature that you have trialed with. And we've lost Sarah one more time.
One more thing to that is that when it's so cold, you can't taste anything. It's just cold, like cold water. It's just, you just don't get any of the characteristics. And when it's proper temperature, you get all those beautiful fruit characteristics and all the components of the wine. And when it's too warm, you just get a mouthful of alcohol, which is unpleasant. So it is really, it's really important to figure out your temperature.
Absolutely agree.
Wine.
I completely agree with you there, Karen. Well, I do believe it's time now to jump to our next wine. So we are going to go over to the lovely Suzanne, and we are going to have a little look at Phifer Pavitt. So here we go. Let me put that up there. So please tell us a little bit about your wine, Suzanne.
So this is the Phifer Pavitt Date Night Sauvignon Blanc. This is actually the second of the wines that we produced. We started, my husband and I started the Phifer Pavitt brand in 2005 and started making Cabernet Sauvignon. We're in the Napa Valley, no giant surprise there. And actually several years into having wine dinners and tastings and pouring my lovely counterparts, several of which are actually on this panel, their Sauvignon Blancs, which is a great thing to do. It just became confusing to the consumer. And so I decided that we needed to make a white wine. I'm a big fan of Sancerres and Bordeaux Blancs, these flavorful wines, and really wanted to make a Sauvignon Blanc. So my father-in-law is also our winemaker, and so I solicited him, my partner in crime, to make a very specific Sauvignon Blanc. As we're all talking about, it's your personality that comes out. I wanted that bright, beautiful acidity, but I wanted a little more tropical, deep stone fruit finish, a really, what I like to describe, a more voluptuous Sauvignon Blanc. So this is 100% Sauvignon Blanc, 100% stainless. And then we actually sur-lie for almost 3 months. In the early days, we even went further.
Could you just, sorry, Suzanne, could you just tell me what surly is as well? Because it would be great to explain that to the audience, just so they know what that term means.
Oh, Aidy, you're going to have the Southern woman explain the French terms. Perfect. Excellent. So the French, on many accounts, have it all right. And what better way than to assign a French word to maybe a word that doesn't otherwise denote a beautiful connotation. So no one wants to say stir the sediment because that's really unsavory. So the French word for sediment are the lees. So what gathers at the bottom. And so to stir is to stir, and the lees are the sediment. So, you know, nice trivia. Surly makes you sound very worldly and traveled. And so it's really just to stir the sediment. So as those particulates develop in the bottom, some people from a style want to filter that out and get rid of them. We like to call them the flavor crystals. And so we want our wine to have more flavor, more voluptuousness, as I said, a little more depth of character on the bottom note. So the stainless steel allows us to maintain that bright tropical acidity, those bright tones that you traditionally expect in a Sauvignon Blanc. But as I said earlier, that voluptuous and deeper flavor profile, the guava, the stone fruit, the peaches, the white peaches, also complement a lot of really zesty, spicy, flavorful foods, such as my personal favorite, Indian. And we make just under 1,000 cases, give or take, on that year. We also harvest this fruit. We collaboratively farm with a vineyard in Pope Valley, which is not its own separate appellation, but is part of the Napa Valley appellation. But the key to the Sauvignon Blanc from Pope Valley is it's in a little bit higher in elevation. So we get a little bit longer growing season, a little longer hang time than some of our Napa Valley floor counterparts get. So oftentimes, as my compatriots here have said, we too pick several picks, the higher elevation, and as we go down, multiple picks depending on the fruit flavor profile. So stylistically for us, definitely our personality, full flavor, full bodied Sauvignon Blanc, a little more. When I explain it to people, I think Karen said she's converted many oh, I don't drink Sauvignon Blanc people. And I would say the same thing, because I try to encourage folks to just jump out of their comfort zone. They've associated, I'll try not to use too much of a descriptor, but there's a house Sauvignon Blanc that the world came to know many years ago that's very green and very high acid. And some people, it just does not agree with them. And so the marketing concept has pushed everyone over to that style of Sauvignon Blanc. And what I like to say is there's been a paradigm shift, I feel like, and Napa Valley Sauvignon Blancs are so incredibly approachable and so incredibly versatile. Give it a try. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't like it, but more than not, they love it. So we love our style of Sauvignon Blanc and drink it in many different scenarios throughout the year. So
I think it's fabulous. I'd love to hear, because we're full of wine experts here. I'd love to hear what our other panelists think of this as well. I completely agree with you. There's that voluptuous flavor coming in. There's all the stone fruits. There's a texture, and it's that surly, as we say, which made you sound very cultural, I will add. You know, that you can really taste it. So I saw, Stacy, you just had a big gulp then. Tell me what you're thinking of this as well. Do you agree?
I did. I was actually, was going to text with Sara a little bit later and mention to Suzanne how much I like that little bit, the extra texture and the creaminess on the finish that the surly is adding to it. And it's something we don't do a lot of Sauvignon Blanc barrels, so the surly is a little difficult. But when we think of, fun experiments to do every harvest, this is definitely going on my list to see what our vineyards can do with a little bit of that stirring and a little bit of a surly activity.
Love it. Surly. Fantastic. Surly. Well, Stacy, seeing as though you're talking, and seeing as though Suzanne was just talking about food, that's got me thinking about my next question. And this is one for both yourself and Raj, but I'll come to you first, given you're on with me right now. You know, one thing that I always find fascinating about Sauvignon Blanc, and also just before I say that, audience, lovely audience, please let us know right now what you love to eat with Sauvignon Blanc. And it can be absolutely anything. Now, the reason I ask this question is because all too often, stereotypically in restaurants, we're always told that fish and salad are the two things that will go with Sauvignon Blanc. And they do. There is absolutely no question about that. But there are a variety of other things, including even red meats, that you can really easily have with Sauvignon Blanc. So Stacy, I give you the floor first, and we just hope that you haven't chosen the same thing that Raj is about to say as well.
In terms of, well, I would say overall that actually red wines are harder to pair with a wide variety of food than white wines. You know, I've had red wines with scallop that makes the wine taste like you're licking metal. But white wines can go with just a huge variety of food. And when I think about pairing a wine with a dish that we're making for dinner, for example, you know, I simply try to either complement the flavor. So like last night we had shrimp scampi, so it was lemony and buttery. So I picked a lemony buttery Chardonnay, or something that's going to, that's an opposite but going to complement. So when I think about, I was talking with my husband about this last night, a red wine with Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc has light, a bright acidity and beautiful floral notes. And something like Suzanne mentioned, Southeast Asian or Chinese cuisine that's really spicy. But, you know, especially when you use the Chinese peppercorns, that give you that little numbing, but they're also very fruity. So you have a fruitiness that complements the fruitiness of your wine, but you also have that spice, and the acidity of your wine is going to help wash that out and cool your mouth. So we actually picked Mongolian beef. A really spicy Mongolian beef would be, we thought that would be the best beef complement to Sauvignon Blanc. But really anything, you know, again, matching the herbaceousness, matching the floral notes. You know, you could think of like a Tuscan style steak, but with that minty or really herbal sauce on, or a chimichurri on top. You know, that would also be a really great sort of pairing, again, matching and complementing your predominant flavors.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And we've had some other people send in some suggestions as well, which I'll read out after Raj has given his. So, but thank you for that, Stacey. I completely agree with you. Raj, what should people be drinking Sauvignon Blanc with that isn't the staple traditional just salad or fish?
I agree with Susan and Stacy. Is that spicy food is great with it. Sauvignon Blanc, and you know, you look at something like a chicken tikka masala or butter chicken or vindaloo. There's nothing better to wash that down with a great, nice, cold Sauvignon Blanc. It's much better than the dark beer. And it's just beautiful. And you know, it does well with different types of cuisine too. Like you talk about beef and Vietnamese food, they have what they call shaken beef, which is actually black pepper with beef. And it's just beautiful, and it's really spicy, and it has vegetables in it and everything else, and it's salty a little bit, and it's perfect with Sauvignon Blanc. And so there's a lot of great foods that you can have with it. It's just not fish. You can have it with a lot of things, and you can have it with lamb vindaloo or anything like that. And so there are a lot of spicy foods out there that Sauvignon Blanc goes. I personally feel that it goes better than even a Chardonnay would because of that acidity. It cleans out the palate really well, and it balances it out.
I love it. I love it. Two fantastic suggestions that I hope people will take with them as well, in knowing that, you know, it's not just all about fish and salad, but at the same time, there are some amazing dishes just like that. And I'm going to read a couple out that we have here. So sushi, of course, amazing pairing. We've got oysters and caviar from Terralin, amazing. Spicy prawns, tacos, grilled peaches with blue cheese and jamon. Wow. I mean, I've not eaten yet, and I'm very excited after this to go on the old Deliveroo and see what. I don't think I'll be getting food like that though from Deliveroo. Goat cheese, roasted beef, arugula salad. Very good, Deborah. Fantastic. Chinese food, melon and prosciutto, pork tenderloin, and even Chick-fil-A. There you go. So we've got a bit of absolutely everything going on here. Seared foie gras, completely. Well, thank you for, you know, sending in your little choices there as well, and keep doing that with any questions that you may have. That's what we're here for. And I now we'll move to my next question before we delve into our final wine from Raj, which again, very excited to get through each one of these wines and see how different they are from one another. And my next question is one for Sara. So we know that Sauvignon Blanc is often, blended with Semillon, and that formidably happens in Bordeaux, and it's happening more and more in Napa. But my question for you would be, if there was one grape variety that you could blend with Sauvignon Blanc, and it can be absolutely anything, even for experimental purposes, what would you choose and why?
So for me, first of all, I'm going to apologize for my computer screen coming down because it's windy up here. It's beautiful, but windy, and I apologize. So now it's taped down, so hopefully that won't happen.
It's entertaining. Don't worry about it. It's giving everyone great entertainment. We love it.
Next time, just tape down your screen, people. So I would say, so for me, so one of the things that's kind of cool about Sauvignon Blanc, and Semillon is delicious, but sometimes can be a little sweaty, and I enjoy kind of those fruity, more floral characteristics. And so I would choose maybe a little bit of muscat. We do use the muscat clone in the Sauvignon Blanc. And from time to time, I have experimented with blending a little bit of muscat in that because it just kind of elevates and really enhances kind of those like floral, pretty fruit, the stone fruits in there. And so to me, I'm like, I think I would choose muscat because Semillon, been there, everybody does that. And it's not quite as floral and pretty. And it really is dependent on the style that you are going for and what you're trying to get out of it. So yeah, muscat.
Amazing. What do you think, or does anyone think on here, what is one grape variety that has likely never been blended with Sauvignon Blanc? One Cabernet Franc with Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, it baffles my mind to think that, more and more now we are having red grapes which are in form white wine just because they're bleeding off the juice straight away. There's no maceration. And it just really intrigues me. Syrah, Susie says Syrah, blending, Sauvignon Blanc with Syrah. What would that be like? And so I just think the world of wine is fascinating. And I do hope at one point in time, someone decides to delve into that really obscure world of blending as an experiment to see what it's like, because I think that there's the next best thing just waiting to happen. But speaking of next, did you say something there, Sara? No,
I'm just saying we'll be getting ready to experiment at some point.
Yes.
My getting ready to experiment. Yeah.
I love it. It's like an evil Bond villain gesture of experimentation. Also, why are all villains in movies British? That's one thing I'll never understand. But in the meantime, whilst we ponder that, I would love to move over to Raj, who will tell us about our final wine of this evening. And thank you, Raj. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's Patel wine, Sauvignon Blanc. It's 100% Sauvignon Blanc from Rutherford, and we barrel age it for 14 months. So completely different than most Sauvignon Blancs. We also barrel ferment a piece of it and stainless ferment 3/4 of it. And then we blend it back. And then we use somewhere between 20 to 60% new oak. And then it's bottled, and then we do that. So it creates this amazing layers and textures. Just like what Karen and Susan were talking about, is it that there's a group out there that, never Sauvignon Blanc. And when they taste really well-made Sauvignon Blanc, then they see that, this is better than the white wine I'm drinking today. And they realize that. And it's a really good thing to do that. I said, just try it. What's the worst thing that you can have? As a matter of fact, there's a spit bucket right there. How's that? Just to help them out. And the thing is that they try it and they're like, wow, this is totally different. And I believe that Napa Sauvignon Blanc today, from all the different producers, produce a much better Sauvignon Blanc than what was ingrained into them, something that they tasted 10 years ago that was extremely bright, extremely acidic or something. And it just wasn't well made, or just wasn't the wine that it should have been. And today, Napa Sauvignon Blanc has come out so much better. And you have all these different producers that make different Sauvignon Blancs. We make one that has a beautiful mid palate, ages really well. I just had the 2016 the other day, and it's coming along just fine. So, where you would normally drink something that was 2019 right now, we're drinking 17 today. And it has those beautiful floral notes. Like I said, a really nice long finish. It's not as acidic and bright as most Sauvignon Blancs, but it does have this beautiful finish to it.
And again, that's fantastic. One thing to get across to the audience there is we've looked at now these amazing 5 different Sauvignon Blancs, and the description that we've had from each of the winery owners or the winemakers has been so very different based on each one. Sauvignon Blanc really isn't this one trick pony where you just, shove the grapes in and make this wine, which is very citrus forward at all. It has so many different expressions. Not only that, but you can age it. And you can have it with, oak and lees, or surly, as Suzanne, and I like to say surly. And also the foods that it goes with, it's not just for this one singular entity of food. You can open up to so many realms. So as we begin to near the end of today's session, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you do have any last minute questions, ping them over now. I have one more, and I'm getting onto my kind of favorite question of the end of the seminar now, or the session. And this one is for Karen. And I always like to ask this particular question. If you could refer to Napa Sauvignon Blanc as a person, actor, celebrity, historical figure, anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Okay, can I say one thing before that?
Yes.
Thank you. One thing we haven't talked about is growing Sauvignon Blanc in the vineyards. And I don't want to leave that portion out, because that's where winemaking starts. And Sauvignon Blanc, with all these green notes that we've been mentioning along the way, and how those were present in so many Sauvignon Blancs early on, I think that we've fine-tuned our farming and understand how to better grow our grapes, to get rid of those flavors in the vineyard before we bring it into the cellar. And then in the cellar, you can put your stamp on it, whatever you want it to be. So that was, I have to wave the flag for the vineyards.
No,
so,
thank you very much for that. Thank you.
And when you asked that question, and don't ask me why, I didn't give a lot of thought to this. The first name that popped up was Lucille Ball, because I think, Sauvignon Blanc to me is a little sassy and like a redhead, and it makes you smile. And I love her sense of humor. And Sauvignon Blanc's hard not to love when you get a good glass of Sauvignon Blanc. And all of these wines today that we were tasting are beautiful. But I also think that as Lucille Ball, lives on, so does Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, people sort of weave in and out of who's the star of the moment, anything but Chardonnay, anything but Sauvignon Blanc, and they're experimenting with all these wonderful varietals from around the world. But Sauvignon Blanc is a classic wine, classic grape, and it's always going to be there. And, it's classic, and it lives on just like Lucy.
Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. I love that one. I love that. And if anyone else has, if anyone else there in the audience is thinking, what personality traits, what celebrity, what actor, hit us with your answers, because we'd love to know. I have one last question for today, and this is for Suzanne. And this is more for everyone watching to just kind of discover one more thing, one more takeaway that they may not have previously known. So tell us, is there one thing about Napa Valley we may not have previously known?
That is such a giant question. I think the thing that I would like to share with the greater audience that they probably don't know about the Napa Valley is the truly collaborative nature that exists here. In every other industry that I've ever been part of, there is a huge sense of competition. And I also observe in hosting people at our winery, I will often get the question from business people or people considering coming here, who's your biggest competitor? Which wines are you competing against? And I think I say this on behalf of everyone. I haven't ran across in the 20 years here anything different, is that the only competition is yourself. Is to making a better wine, a more balanced wine, flexing your artistry and your muscle. It's so collaborative, and we are a valley of farmers. It's pretty sexy and cosmopolitan, and we love that everyone loves that and lives vicariously. But when the bright, tinkly side of the Napa Valley is quiet and it's harvest time, we're all farmers. And if you run into a challenge that Mother Nature presents, which has been commonplace for the last several years, I wouldn't hesitate reaching out to my neighbor or anyone amongst my peers to ask for help. And so I think that collaborative nature that we all really, truly, at the core of who we are, want to represent and carry on this amazing legacy that the Napa Valley and our forefathers and those before us have painstakingly created. So collaboration, farming style, and really just wanting us to all celebrate the success of each other is the pervasive attitude that I find in the Napa Valley. And I don't know that that always presents itself to those coming to just drink and enjoy the wine. They all assume that it's an industry like every other industry, and I don't find that to be the case. It is a beautiful, beautiful collaboration of humans trying to work together and all get better. And that's not just female or male, that is just human, that we all want each other to succeed. And I think that's why you find people that have been in this for so very long, that they're encouraged and inspired by humankind. And I'm really proud to be part of this industry.
I think that's a really touching and fitting message for us to
I'd like
finish
to
on
add
as
to
well.
that, Aidy.
Please, Stacy, please.
Actually, that is not just a talking point. 2 years ago, in the middle of harvest, in the middle of crushing fruit, my must pump broke down. And it's just one of the big pumps that we use during processing. And I reached out to my entire, to my network, and Sara Fowler texted me back and said, I have an extra must pump. She sent it over to my winery, and she sent over her electrician with it to make sure that we got the voltage right. And we were able to crush that day because of her. And, that's genuine, what Suzanne is expressing.
Oh,
she was my hero.
I love that. You know what? Everyone looks after one another.
Love.
Yeah, the
Love
love.
you.
And
We really
you know
do.
what?
We
Even
really
as
do.
a journalist, I see this as well. I'll speak to one particular winery and say, hey, I'm looking to feature XYZ or XYZ, as we say in America. And I'm told, yes, we have this, but also just down the road, so-and-so has this, so-and-so has this, and so-and-so has this. And it's not I'm just going to keep this particular wine and have it in your article myself. I'm going to spread the love with those around me. So I think that is really prevalent. It is. And can you tell me, I've just had a question coming, for those who have tasting rooms, are your tasting rooms now open?
We are open outside. Yes. Outside
Great.
tasting.
Okay, outside tasting's fantastic. And Stacy, are you open right now?
We are for outside tasting. So we've had to convert a little bit of the parking lot, our picnic tables that we usually, eat our lunch at. We've got people sitting and enjoying our wines. We'll do anything we can to help the industry and help people enjoy our wines when they're visiting.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, I'll certainly be posting about these wines after this session. You can follow me on Instagram at SYPPED. I tried to get sipped. Someone took it with an I. I had to use a Y. Very original. And you can also follow Napa Vintners. They'll be doing exactly the same thing. To our incredible audience, thank you so much for joining in. We can see the number of those who joined at the beginning and who are stuck throughout the session. And you have been here throughout the entirety of today. So we thank you very much for joining us in today. We wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for you. I hope that you've enjoyed this session. I hope that you've taken something away with you. Thank you so much to our amazing panel for coming together today to just help the world discover a little bit more about the journey of Sauvignon Blanc. So I'll leave you on that note. Thank you, everyone. Have an absolutely lovely weekend, and we will see you soon. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye, y'all.
Just comment joining us now. Bye-bye.